Welcome to Rare But Real, where we discuss what it takes to be a woman of God in these challenging days. And now, please welcome your host, Audrey Brogy.
Hey there. I came into the office today to record a special Memorial Day podcast that will drop on the day after Memorial Day. But I am here in my office because God just put some things on my heart. Now, I was originally going to have Growing Older Part 4 dropping tomorrow on May 26th, but instead it will be this, and then we'll pick up that podcast next week. But I just have some things I want to share on this Memorial Day. And as I think about it, you know, I have two Marine sons. One's a major in the Marine Corps. The other is a captain. And I'm so proud of them, the way they serve our country and for the sacrifices that they make. I'm so thankful that they are here and they have not paid the ultimate sacrifice, but so many have. And I remember them. And so I'm going to do a couple of things today. One is I'm going to talk about a family gathering that we had on Saturday. And then I'm going to talk about someone who did lose his life serving our nation, and he happens to be the father of my son-in-law. And so I'm going to start by just sharing just some personal things because we had a McKay family reunion on this past Saturday, which was 2 days ago, and it was just so great. And when I got home, my heart was just so full from the day together, and I wrote down some things, and I'm just going to share those with you. In fact, I'm just going to kind of read it, and I will probably put this on my website, audreybrogy.com, so you can read it later. Maybe it will be an encouragement for you, no matter what you're going through in your family's life or whatever. But these are just some things that hit me really hard and really in a special way. And this is what I wrote. There are some days that quietly become sacred without planning for them to be sacred. Our Memorial Day Saturday gathering this year felt like that. At least it did to me. Since our father, my daddy, died in 2014, and then our mother, and I always call her Mama, died at the end of 2023, our family had not gathered in the same way that we used to. The last time we were all together was after Mama's funeral. And you know, before she passed, in her good years, Mama had been the one who would always open her home. She would plan the food. She would plan a gathering. She would welcome every single child, every grandchild, every great-grandchild, and even extra people through her door. And somehow she made that feel effortless. Sometimes I would think back and say, how did she do all of this? How did she make it come together? But she did. And when our dad was alive, we used to do it every year at some point. You know, sometimes it would be Christmas, sometimes Thanksgiving. And of course, as my siblings and I grew and our families grew, sometimes we weren't always able to be there, but my mother always had a longing for that. And she would make it happen. And yeah, she did it sometimes Memorial Day. In fact, she even after my dad died, in 2014, and he died the end of September. And then she still had a Thanksgiving gathering at her house for whoever could come. And she always was so good about it. Whoever can come. I know not everybody can come, but someone can come. And so she would open it. But after she was gone, I think all of us, and when I say all of us, I'm talking about my three siblings and myself, quietly probably wondered on our own, will we ever have a gathering again? I know we thought about it. I've talked about it with some of my siblings or all of them at some point. But if we did, what would it be like without at least one of our parents who represented the cord that held us all together? And if we did, I wondered if, you know, if it would be a joyful event or if it would be more full of grief, or if joy and grief could both be present. And could it really, really, really be a joyful occasion, or would it be sad? I didn't know, and I certainly didn't plan anything myself. Well, this Memorial Day Saturday, my brother Trent and his wife opened their home, and they invited whoever could come. He reached out a few months ago and wanted to know if it was something that we would like to do, and they would love to host it. Now, not everybody was able to be there, but a lot of people did come, and somehow it was enough. Sure, I would have loved it if every single person could have been there, but regardless, the day was such a gift. Now, rain had been predicted for the entire day. My sister and I had been texting back and forth last week talking about it's going to rain, it's going to rain, it's going to rain, like the floodgates were going to open up and it was going to be. And we were thinking about that and wondering what that would be like. And I asked her when one of my texts, I said, pray with me that God would hold it off. Not that we couldn't have a good time in the rain if it rained, but we have lots of children and I knew for my brother and his wife, it would be so much nicer if it didn't rain. And for all of us, of course. But it's like this. Somehow the Lord held off the rain. The skies were calm. And in fact, I would use the word, the skies were gentle, and it was like the Lord himself had spread a covering over the gathering and regulated the temperature. It was exactly right. It wasn't too hot. It wasn't too cold. It was just perfect. It was comfortable enough for people to linger outside. They had set up tables in their garage and then in a separate little garage that they had a inflatable, slide for the younger children, and they had all kinds of toys, but it was comfortable enough for everybody to linger, everybody to talk maybe longer than they intended. And my brother had also said, you can come as early as you like and you can stay as long as you like, which we did. It was comfortable enough too for all of the children. And trust me, there were plenty of children to run and all these cousins to laugh and little groups to form naturally all across the yard, in the house, outside the house, under this huge magnolia tree in the backyard where the boys, at least some of the boys, grandchildren, climbed the tree. I took some photos. In fact, I'm going to put this, I wrote these things down, but I'm talking through it as well. But, and I will put it on my website, on the blog part of my website, and I will post lots of pictures. In fact, I'll probably put it on my Instagram as well. But it was just so great. And that's what I will remember the most about it, because it wasn't just one huge moment, but it was like 1,000 small moments just spread all over and throughout the whole day. And seeing all of my mother's her children, meaning my siblings and I, our spouses, those who could be there, and then our children, her grandchildren, and then her great-grandchildren, and even a great-great-grandchild, seeing all of them play together as if they had known each other for 100 years. And sometimes they just, a lot of them met for the first time because we all live all over the place. We don't gather regularly. It's not like I have ever lived when I got married close to my siblings or close to my parents. We've always lived other places, but there's something about family. There's something about that blood, that there's a kinship there. There's something there that holds you together. There's a cord that holds you together. And so all of that was so perfect. And then, of course, there were lots of boys, and they were playing football in the yard, in my brother's yard, the way that my brothers and our boy children and the girls too, used to play football in mom and daddy's yard. It made me think about that. And you would see the grown-up daddies out there throwing the football with them. And I remember times in my mom's yard, like Hope and me and my sister-in-law and some of the teenage girls, when they got older, we would be sitting in the yard watching all the guys play football. I don't know. It was just great. And of course, there was the sound sound of the children who were running all throughout the yard, so much laughter. And then my brother, we had a conversation as we were walking around watching the children play, and they had these they're called turtle flyers, I think. You'll see pictures of them if you go back and look when I post all of this. They were turtle flyers. He said that he had gotten that he and his wife had gotten for their children when they were growing up. And at one point he was thinking, I should probably get rid of those. But Deborah, my sister-in-law, said, no, we need to keep those. And I cannot tell you how great that was. Not only were the children playing on those, but the grown-ups were playing on those as well. It was just so good. But just seeing too, like even the things that we talked about with my sister and my other brother, and, some of the things that I think about the four of us as siblings, we share decades of memories. And, you have the same childhood. You have the same house that you grew up in, whether it's the house that we shared as when we were little children, or it's the houses that when my parents moved from place to place. My dad was a pastor, and so sometimes he would pastor different churches. But we all shared that. And even at one point, I asked one of my brother's grandchildren came up and whispered to me and said, my papa tells me a lot of stories about you and him. And I said, oh, I'm sure he does. And then she whispered and said, he told me about when you and him, y'all climbed up on the roof, and then your mom came and he was telling you to hide, and you said, hey, Mama. And I can't believe how much of the details she remembered about that story. But I said, well, he's not wrong. That happened. And I added to that and said, yes, it was your papa, our cousin Karen, and me. I don't even know what possessed us to climb up onto the roof of the educational building. We lived in a parsonage at that time, and the church had an educational building, and we went up. I don't know why we did it. I have no idea. Our older brother probably dared us to do it. I don't know. But as we're up there on that roof, we see my mother coming in the car, coming home. She wasn't supposed to be there yet. And so my brother Trent and my cousin said, oh, Doug, we need to hide. We need to go down the roof line. And I said, she already sees us. We may as well act like we're not doing anything wrong. And so I'm up there going, hey, Mama. Well, when Mama parked that car, she comes marching over to the educational building, and we all got spankings. Anyway, but even that is just, and of course I asked my brother after Adelaide told me that, and I said, why did we go up on the roof? He said, I don't remember. But then we started talking about other dumb things we did when we were kids. It was really fun talking about that stuff. Anyway, and so the stories that, that we told, that we relived a little bit, it was just very sweet. And then it was very sweet hearing that from his little granddaughter telling me that, like the next generation, and seeing them playing with each other, building relationships. And then, while the older generation, which is now us, which is now my siblings and myself, we're the older generation, and we watch and we take it all in. I don't know. There was something so deeply healing about being together after losing both of our parents. Grief changes you. It just does. And it doesn't change who you are in the deepest recesses of your soul, but it makes such a mark on you. And no matter, whether it's just when you lose someone that's close to you, that has built into your life, someone that you love with your whole heart, whether it's your parents or your grandparents, whether it's you've lost a child or a grandchild, but it changes you. And in this situation, our parents, who once anchored our family, and they're no longer physically present with us. And so there's kind of a shift. And I was wondering what that shift would feel like. I really did, even though we were gathering at my brother's home and not my parents' home. I wondered what it would be like. But it reminded me that while our parents have physically left us, they left children who still know how to love each other, even with our differences, even with our annoyances, whatever you fill in the blank. Those of you who've grown up in a family with several children, you understand that. But once again, that shared childhood follows you. And because our parents loved us, they weren't perfect people, and they would be the first to say that. But because they loved us, we love each other because, no matter what, because, mom and daddy love their oldest son. They love their oldest daughter. They love me, their third child and second daughter. And then they loved my brother Trent, who came a little bit less than a year after me. And if you're a parent, you know what that's like. You love all your children. You just love them. And one of your hopes and your prayers is that your children, after you're gone, that they'll have each other's backs, that they will love each other. I always say they don't have to be best friends. You hope they will in one sense, but you hope that they would always love each other and care for each other and have each other's backs no matter what. So as I think about all of this, I think too that Mama would have loved every minute of that day. My dad too. I'm thinking about Mama more because of her hosting and all the things that she did, and because she lived another 9.5 years, almost 10 years, after my dad. Actually, it was 9 years. 9 years in September, 3 months after, almost 10 years, I guess. If you round up. And the reason I say that is because I remember after she died and all of us were gathered in her house after her funeral, I remember looking around at all of the extended family, her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, all of us were there. And I thought how she had often said she wished she could have one more Christmas gathering at her home. Just one more. I mean, she said that. And, but she had it. She died on December 27th of that year, and her whole family legacy was there on December 30th. And I remember thinking about that, and I shared that with my daughter, just looking around and seeing everybody talking to each other and having that shared moment of remembrance, and even being in her house and all those things, and thinking how she had it. If she could have planned her death and decided when she wanted to die, okay, it's after my children and their families have their Christmas, then I'm going to go to be with the Lord, and then they'll gather afterwards. I don't know. Anyway, so getting back to this past Saturday, what I'm calling our Memorial Day Saturday, I know she would have loved hearing the noise. She would have loved seeing the people eating everywhere, anywhere they could find a seat. She would have loved seeing her children having a good time together, watching her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, even great-great-grandchildren playing. And she would have loved the lingering conversations that lasted so much longer than the actual eating of the meal. I think she would have noticed some of the details that maybe no one else noticed. And I think, too, she would have been deeply happy knowing that even after her going to be with the Lord, that we gathered and that her youngest child made it happen. And, of course, I've thought about the day, and my only regret, if I have a regret, is that we didn't stop and take a group photograph. I talked about that with my brother, my brothers and my sister, just for a brief moment. And you know what? At first it bothered me because it felt like, I don't know, such an important day, and we missed that. But the more I've thought about it since then, the more I realize that the best part of family life sometimes is not always captured in pictures anyway. I remember one Christmas, even when my children were growing up, that we didn't take any photos. And I remember thinking about that afterwards. And my son Jeremy at the time was helping me take down the Christmas tree. And he basically said that. He basically reminded me, oh, Mom, it's the memories anyway. We had a good time. And so I thought about that. Sometimes the great moments are only the ones that live in our minds and in our hearts and in our memories. The way you felt after that day or during the day, the conversations, the laughter, all of those things, and just knowing that this day mattered, and it did matter. We live in a world where families are often scattered and distracted, and they're busy. And sometimes we don't make the time, and lots of times we can't make the time. We just can't, and that's all right too. If I couldn't have gone on Saturday, the Lord would have met me there, and it would have been okay. But still, I'm glad I was able to be there, and to know that there was something really great about just being with them, not some elaborate plan, just our family gathering after a loss. Once again, those who could be there. The older I get, the more I realize that these are the kinds of days that we do carry with us. You know, they do. I mean, I will carry it with me. You know, it was just an ordinary day, and it was a simple gathering, and it just happened. So I love that. And as I experienced it, and as I had so many moments that day of watching everyone and looking around, I don't know, y'all, it felt like remembering where I came from. Remembering, you know, the simple life I came from. That, you know, it was just a man and a woman who loved the Lord and flawed as though they were, in the simple area where I grew up, where there wasn't 100 million opportunities to grow and develop other than a simple life. But I loved it anyway. And I don't know, that day, even though it wasn't at my parents' farm, it felt like honoring the people who built us. It felt like grief and joy were friends. Remember, I mean, I did wonder what that would be like, but it was like it came together. It just came together. And I don't know, I just loved it so much. And I just always think about how kind our God is. So that's a little bit of what I wanted to share about my weekend. And again, I know this is Memorial Day weekend, how we honor those who have served our country and have given their lives for our country, but it was also in a different way, kind of a memorial of remembering, of just remembering my parents. And this brings me to something else I want to share. I had it pulled up on my computer, and there we go. Okay, and you can read this anytime you want because it is up on the blog on my website. But I do want to, since it is Memorial Day, I do want to read it to you. And I wrote it a number of years ago. In fact, I wrote it when my son-in-law, Grant Castleberry, his birthday is May 27th, so it's in a couple of days. And that year that I wrote it, his birthday fell on Memorial Day. And so I went to the National Cemetery, which I will do today. With my husband, we'll go there and we will visit his dad's marker. But this is what I wrote, and I'm just going to read it to you. This year, the birthday of my son-in-law, Grant, falls on Memorial Day, and this makes me think of him in a special way. Thoughts of him make me think of his father, the late Captain Charles Kelly Castleberry, and really all those who have served our country. I had heard Captain Castleberry's story when we first moved to Beaufort back in 1990. Our family had moved to this military town because Community Bible Church had asked my husband to take the position of senior pastor. Everyone in our church had been affected by the death of this Marine. The mid-air collision off the coast of South Carolina that took his life had happened just 4 short years before we came. The story was still fresh. I remember hearing about their family, about the waiting when they were searching for him in the water, about finally realizing he was gone. And then I remember hearing about the funeral. I heard how meaningful, touching, and sad, but also refreshing was the story of Kelly Castleberry. See, I was told that this little family loved the Lord. I was told that Captain Castleberry was not only one of the few and the proud in the Marine Corps, but he was also one of the few and proud who knew Jesus Christ. Visiting a cemetery, any cemetery, is sobering. We walk among the graves and realize that one day there will be a headstone for us. I think about that as I sometimes visit and put fresh orchids at the headstone of this man I never knew. The little orchids seem so small, but still I place them there, and I think maybe I should put larger ones. But there they stand, next to his marker, delicate yet honoring this man's life. Each time I go, I linger. I pray for my son-in-law. I pray for my daughter. I pray for their children. I think about life. It matters how we live it. It matters what we stand for. It matters how we invest it. Our legacy matters. I never knew this man. Sometimes I've stood alone at the headstone of a man I never knew. Other times I'm with my husband, my children and grandchildren. But when I am alone, I somehow, in my small, insignificant way, want to honor his memory. I gaze at the oak trees just behind his marker, the sun filtering through the Spanish moss, late in the day. It's so beautiful. Then I stare beyond his gravestone. Once, when I visited back in 2013, when Grant Castleberry's birthday was on Memorial Day as well, I remember seeing a man sitting on a bench with his head down. I saw another man cleaning a headstone. I saw a young woman holding the hand of a little boy lingering at another grave marker. And I thought, this is such a sacred place. Back then, I looked again at Captain Castleberry's headstone, and I thanked God for his life as tears ran down my face. I thanked God for his widow, who placed her trust in the sovereignty of God. I thanked God for the man who eventually married her and helped her raise her boy as his own. And then I thanked God for that boy. That boy is now part of my life. No, Captain Castleberry, you didn't get to see your boy grow up. But my, what an impact you had in his young life. You left a legacy. From what I've been told, you were always faithful. I never knew you, Captain Castleberry, but I know your son. You would be so proud of both the husband and the father he has become. And Carl and I know you would love our daughter. You'd be so happy that she is the one helping your son and raising your grandchildren. Your boy is following in your footsteps. So I thank you, Captain Castleberry, Semper Fi, from a mother you never knew. That's just the hope of the gospel, y'all, because I never knew him. He doesn't know me. But when we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. We will be with all of those who have gone before us. And if the Lord tarries and we leave this life, then the ones that we leave behind will only have memories of us. And it matters how we live. It matters the legacy. It matters what we do with our days. It matters how we honor the Lord with our lives. So those are my thoughts, y'all, on this Memorial Day in 2026. And I hope, along with me, that you will live every day of your life in honor of the one who gave his life on the cross for us, that we might be reconciled to God. And I'm so thankful that he did. I'm so thankful that he saved me. I'm so thankful that he offers that free gift of salvation. And I'm so thankful that he rose from the dead on the third day. I'm so thankful for the victory that we have in him.
Catch Audrey and her daughter Grace Anna live at Share the Arrows, a women's-only conference hosted by Allie Beth Stuckey. Grab your tickets now at sharethearrows.com. If you enjoyed this episode of Rare But Real, share it with a friend. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Follow Audrey on Instagram and Facebook at Rare But Real, and listen to all her messages on the Rare But Real app.